Sure, let me switch up agenda. All right, I'd like to call a meeting of the Education and Government Committee to order. First up, any discussion from any committee members or legislators? Hearing none, I'd like to move along to item 2 on the agenda, resolutions, and then entertain further discussion on charter review following the resolutions, so we can get through those right away. First up is a resolution approving a new collective bargaining agreement between FMCC, Fulton County, Montgomery County, and the Fulmont Association of College Educators. All sponsors, their second. Seconded by Legislator Diamond. As we heard from the college president last week, this is a new collective bargaining agreement with FACE, one of their primary bargaining units. Is there any discussion or any questions? Hearing none, all in favor of moving to full board?
Aye.
Okay, next up is a resolution approving the concept of locating a solar energy farm on the FMCC campus for use by Hamilton, Fulton, Montgomery County, BOCES. All sponsors, there a second? Legislator Diamond. Any discussion? We heard this proposal as well last week. There were some concerns with some of the language that our county attorney had brought up. I noticed that this endorses the concept. Is that something that addresses some of those concerns at this point?
Well, it gives us some time to work out some of the concerns, and Fulton County, to my understanding, did the same thing, a concept resolution approving the concept there too. So we're consistent there, and it gives us some time to work things out.
That's not my understanding of what Fulton County did.
That was the copy of the resolution they sent, and
I'm not trying to be argumentative, but I don't understand approving the concept. What does that mean?
it means approving the general idea of the solar farm, but giving the county some time to look into it. My understanding was that Fulton County had some of the same concerns we did.
They didn't voice anything with me.
Well,
I will say I did have a conversation with John Stead, and that was verbatim what he communicated to me.
What's that?
That they were still wanting to look at some additional information, and that their resolution was approving the project from as the same language as a concept, and that was our discussion.
So when would there be closure?
hopefully as soon as possible. We're gonna
We lose the NYSERDA funding in May. I've been clear about that all along.
May 31st.
No, the beginning of May.
The clerk has indicated to me that this is the exact resolution that John Stead sent down from Fulton County. I know some of the concerns that were brought up with both land use permits. There's very specific provisions in state law regarding the care and use of county real property, especially if it's a long-term contract, especially if it's over a 5-year term. That was one of the primary concerns. Also, whether or not proper procedure was followed with SECRA, and whether a neg deck was filed. Those were, I think, two of the primary concerns.
Yeah.
Do you know, was a neg deck filed for SECRA or the State Environmental Quality Review?
We didn't receive any notice from any other agency that a seeker was being
I
performed.
guess what I'm confused about is that I still have to run this through the state education department in order for it to be created, and they have a whole separate set of rules that doesn't require what you just said.
I understand that, however, because it involves the use of county property and it's a county government taking an action, there's a set of procedures that have to be followed. And my understanding is that Fulton County had similar concerns. We're planning on working on it. And,
I wish they had voiced it.
It's the first I'm hearing.
It's the first I've heard it as well.
well, I'm sorry about the
Not trying to be
breakdown in
argumentative, just
communication, I
trying to
mean,
understand.
Well, and given the timeliness of the situation, I think maybe we have a conversation tomorrow and see what we can do as far as, maybe moving this forward, if we can.
Well,
resolve some of these
especially,
issues.
we have procedures in place that if there, it's something, an emergency resolution can be added to the agenda at the full board meeting next week, if these issues can be cleared up. But, looking at it right now, since it is a jointly owned county property, there's certain things that we need to do at the county in order to move forward that at least we need some clarification on. Yes.
I would also suggest, because I believe you just said that if we didn't do something by a certain date, the funding was,
That's what I understand, yes.
I would encourage Matt and John Stetter, Matt as our elected county exec, to reach out to our state officials and say, hey, we have a couple valid concerns. Why do we have to, why is it going to go away if it isn't done by May 1st? And maybe they can help us with that, that's all I'm saying.
And given that we were mirroring what they were doing, I didn't even foresee that there was a time issue, so we can certainly.
You know what I mean? If we can
Yeah.
reach out to our
Yeah.
electeds to say, hey, we should have a couple questions, but I think it would behoove us to do that.
Do we want to move forward in placing the resolution on the full board agenda and then make any,
I would.
I would do that.
I think if you move it forward as it is, we can always amend it to take the word concept out,
right.
replace it with something else once there's a little more clarification. That way we're not holding anything up.
all in favor of moving to full board?
Aye.
Very good. Next up is a resolution authorizing a land use permit for FMCC property for a SUNY Research Foundation weather station. I'll take a sponsor in a second. Legislator Wheeler and Legislator Isabel. Again, I believe the same concerns applied to this.
Yeah, but that one is not for the concept.
Yes.
So and that one does not have a time limit until July 2015.
Yes.
So we have time on that one to make sure we can follow the steps.
Does that? Go
Are
ahead.
you suggesting that it's not on here, or we use the word concept, or?
My recommendation to the county legislator on this one would be that we table it. There are some concerns with it, specifically considering looking at the document itself that would implement this project says that the land is owned by FMCC. It's owned, as we know, by the college is not who owns the land. There's some things that need to be cleared up. Probably won't be horrible clearing them up, but we should make sure we're signing the right document. We're authorizing someone to sign the right document.
Any other discussion, questions, concerns?
I think we should move the resolution before our board, if there's a problem with it, then we have a problem, and then we
I'd look for the opinion of my committee man. I respect your opinion, Joe.
Can I
I can't do that.
I'm not on your committee, but can I say something
Oh, of
before
course.
you? I respect all of the people, if I can ask the county attorney,
Sure.
if we did move it to the full board with the hopes of finding the answers by then, we can table it at the full board and then have it go to next month's meeting. Kind of hoping for the best, preparing for the worst. I'm definitely in favor of tabling it, but if we can possibly get the answers,
Yeah,
that would, because that's why we would table it, because we don't have all the answers.
absolutely.
So if we could pass it, if we can forward it to the full board in hopes to get the answers, that way we can table it if we don't have all of the answers.
Chair
Well,
Kelly.
Can't we just let it stay in committee, because I'm sure we're gonna have some questions about it if there is no time, if it's not as
A
time.
matter of fact, I have a committee meeting next week before the full board meeting. So, if we leave it in committee, we can pass it out of committee that evening and on to full board. Is that something you're comfortable with, tabling it until next Tuesday at the Education and Government meeting?
Either that or moving it with a negative
I
recommendation.
don't think we should move it with a negative, because it is
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah.
It is, but then
Yeah.
everybody can vote on it.
We're
now-
I agree with,
You'll have time. We'll be talking. Yes.
the chair can always put it on as an add-on from the chairman. If you move it, and someone like me comes confused, there's a chance that we vote on something that we really don't want to move forward or have the answers to, and it's on the agenda. So either, if you leave it in committee with the sense that you may put it on that night, or allow the chair, you don't have to allow, because he can do it, the chairman approved,
Yeah.
and he puts it on himself.
Yes.
We have time on this one.
Okay.
If you need another month, we have time
Yeah.
on this one. Don't stress yourselves.
Yeah, focus on the other one.
I would say that would be the best bet, especially given we're going through charter. I know that's quite an
Exactly.
undertaking.
You don't have enough time?
So, I
I'll,
do think that would be good.
I'll make a motion to table to the second Tuesday in May, since I'd say my next committee meeting, but
Yeah.
that would be
That would
like
be
tomorrow.
Also, leave the Spencer.
All in favor? Okay. So that's moved, that we're gonna put that on the second Tuesday in May.
And the sponsors stay?
Yes, the sponsors will stay.
Good.
There are no other resolutions on the agenda. Before we move on to the exciting agenda item of the evening, any other discussion from any legislators? Yes.
I wasn't here, and maybe they were watching Wheel of Fortune. I don't know, was you here last week to give a presentation on the solar one?
We did.
Was there any talk with wind energy too, or no?
I looked at the wind energy a while ago, and I was told that actually there's not enough wind to make it worthwhile on the hill.
It's interesting, Tom. It's when I was out in Worcester, it's something that I had looked at, and there's very few places in New York that are prime for wind, and some of them include really right along the Mohawk Valley. In Herkimer County and Montgomery County, town of Glen is actually one of the places that's highlighted as being one of the best places in New York for wind farms. But once you get out of the valley, it really dissipates.
Just wondering, thanks.
Yes.
I'm just curious, did you check into doing it at the college, the solar?
We've entertained a number of proposals, and it's on the cusp, frankly, of
Okay.
whether we're really gonna save anything or not.
Okay.
And we
I'm just curious, yeah.
we just haven't gone there.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? If not, we'll move on to charter discussion. All right, so on for this evening, we've got a whole, I think the county attorney informed me, 16 articles. She was excited to hear that. But however, I will add that these articles that I have scheduled for discussion tonight have very few changes and mainly reflect what's in the charter right now. So we're gonna go through them numerically. And section by section, I'll go through and point out whether there's been any significant changes, and if there's any discussion as we move through it, please let's discuss, and we'll see how we make it.
So we're getting the cliff notes.
Yes, I'll be giving cliff notes as we go through, in case some people didn't do their homework. So starting off, sections 101 through 105, there were no significant changes to. Is there any discussion? Yes, Legislator Wheeler.
All right, do you want to start with 1? Are you gonna put the colors in for 1.06?
We're not on 1.06 yet.
You said 1 through 5.
I said section 1.01 through 1.05.
Oh, sorry.
Any discussion on those sections? Okay. Sections 106 through 108 were added to the charter. It's something that has been done in Dutchess County's charter, which I mentioned is something we were largely fashioned after. Thought it was something that may be of interest to the legislature, but it's in there as a kind of discussion item. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. There are some blanks because I didn't have all the information on the proportions and the exact colors, but thought it was something that would be worthwhile to discuss. Upon speaking with the county attorney, there are some questions and concerns with the county seal because that is in effect a legal signature of the county, if you will. And so whether we want to, there's been no resolution or law in the past that we've found that established that, and it's kind of just always, it's been what it is. So, you know, actually our county attorney has discussed it at length, had quite a few discussions with NISAC, and they're going so far as, you know, they're going to be doing a large piece on county emblems, county insignia, county seals. So, but thoughts in general on these three additions? Yes, Legislator Wheeler.
Okay. 106, the background color and when all printing in. I know we've gone with yellow and blue. Were you thinking of different? Were you thinking of pooling the opinions of the legislature? Or I know the Page Group has done different.
The reason I left those blank is I know historically we've displayed our seal in yellow and blue. Now, obviously the color representation of our seal doesn't have an impact on the legal seal itself. It's a color representation. That would be my opinion.
I think we are running, I don't think we necessarily want to back ourselves into a corner too finely on the seal issue. I've actually done quite a lot of work on this. Starting off with the most important section of the charter, but in all seriousness, the county seal is a very serious item. It's something that's historic, and I would say maybe I would say it's not a bad idea to just keep it out entirely.
Okay.
And if you guys really want it in, maybe we can have a discussion about trying to fine tune the language a little bit further based on what your feeling is.
I have no problem with leaving it out.
Yeah, I would like to leave it out too.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. The less
Everybody
art-
has a say.
The entire section.
Yep, so I'm gonna make note of that, but we'll, in the final draft, we will actually strike section 106, numbering to be renumbered. County seal will not be defined in the draft charter. Sections 107 and section 108 define the county insignia and the county flag. This is something that there really is, I don't want to say no, but there is in effect nothing that we've found that defines what a county, how a county can define its county insignia and county flag. As a lot of us are aware, the state flag represents the state seal, and they're kind of one representation in ourselves. Our county flag is a very similar likeness to our seal currently, but if you look at the United States flag, it's completely different than the United States seal. So there's a little question there as to, you know, what the seal is meant to be a representation, a visual representation of the county. We've just undergone a branding initiative where we've come up with a county insignia that moving forward, if we implement that branding proposal, which I think we are all leaning in that direction, we will be using that as a visual representation of the county, with the seal being a more a legal representation of the county in a visual form. So there's definitely that. I turn it over to Ms. Mannion if she would like to add to that.
The insignia, like Ryan says, we're kind of breaking ground here with this. I would at this point request to be continued on this section and also the county flag. I'm reaching out to the Attorney General to get an official opinion, to make sure we're going through it with all the proper steps that we can, considering it is so groundbreaking.
Good.
Any general thoughts, though, other than that, on defining the new insignia as in our branding initiative and as printed on the front of this charter as the county insignia, and using that to define a flag?
I would just say, I think it's a great idea to go along with the branding initiative as far as this is concerned. It's a new day in Montgomery County.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And the only thing is, and I love the Attorney General counsel, with the flag, would you do the center accompanying approximately?
It would be a proportion.
Perfect.
2/5, I don't know, whatever. We'd have to get some direction from North Star on that.
Gotcha.
All right?
Great.
Okay. The last section of Article 1, definitions. There's been a lot added to this. Our charter as is very sparse on definitions. These are just there as a reference, a glossary for while you're reading the charter. If you say, what's an administrative unit, which we've said many times over the last year, this is a place to go and you'd actually be able to see what an administrative unit is by definition. Any thoughts on the additions and changes?
I like them.
Very good. Okay, moving on. Article 2. Sections 201 through 203 in this draft have no content changes. I would point out that section 202 will be discussed at a later date on the term limits for county legislator, because that would be defined as changing a power or duty of an elected office and would be subject to referendum on petition. So that's going to be at a later meeting, will be on for discussion. Any discussion on those those sections as they are in this draft?
Other than 202.
Other than anything that would affect the power and duty, yes. Hearing none, section 204 deals with vacancies on the county legislature, which is something we've actually dealt with. Right, the last clause, starting on page 3, beginning, if the county legislature fails to fill a vacancy within 30 days after the vacancy occurred, a special election shall be conducted to fill the vacancy within 90 days after the vacancy occurred, provided, however, that if there is a scheduled general election within 120 days after said vacancy occurs, the vacancy shall be filled at that general election. That is a new provision to this section. I drafted that after looking at some other charters and seeing the potential. I think what we want to do in this charter is take away a lot of the potential future conflict areas. And as our charter stands right now, if a vacancy should occur on the legislature, there is nothing to step in if the legislature fails to fill that vacancy. So potentially a legislative seat could go unfilled for potentially up to 3 years. This would step in, and if the legislature fails to fill that vacancy, it would then go to a special election or the next general election. Absolutely, but I think it would be unwise and imprudent of a sitting county legislature not to fill that seat. And if that were the case, I think it would be wise spent money. Exactly. Special election for all of them. Any thoughts on this? Is it something that the legislature feels positively or negatively towards?
I think mostly positively. The only thing, 30 days, I don't know, is that enough time to vet potential candidates.
Good point.
This would be,
Yeah.
I think Rory brings up a good point. I think that sometimes the process does take a little bit of time for the vetting.
Mhm. Sometimes even to find somebody willing to step in and make sure
Yeah.
they're a qualified elector and then move forward could potentially, definitely could take more than 30 days.
Yep.
Yes.
I'm kind of thinking, if something happened January 1st or February, just like in our towns right now, if there's a vacancy that occurs, it's automatically on the November election to fill the unexpired term. Why can't we follow that, which then prevents a 3-year vacancy and prevents a special election? So we appoint within 30 days, or we don't. If we don't, it's automatically going up in November, which takes away having us to spend the money on a special election, and we're only going at a maximum 364 days with a vacancy.
Definitely,
So it's
you know,
kind
a way
of,
we
it's
could
kind of
work.
doing what we want to do here, but it's preventing something from going, right now, as you said, and Ryan makes a valid point. Right now, as it sits, you can go 3 years, right? This way, it has to be filled by the November election. The only, I don't know what the rule is. What if do you know what the answer to this is, Megan? If somebody, isn't there a date in September that if a vacancy occurs, then there is no election in November? Right now, if there's I wish Terry or Jamie were here. If there's a vacancy after a date in September, then there is no election in November.
Well,
For that specific position, you mean?
Yes. I'm pretty
That's-
sure it's September. There's a date in September, like the 15th, that if you don't, if a vacancy occurs after that, then nothing
Because
happens.
there's not enough time to get on the ballot and
Yes.
everything. Yeah.
Right, there's a
Right.
time, I can't remember what it is. So then in that case, it could go more than 364 days. It could actually be,
Yeah, there's a cutoff for
it
getting
could
it
actually
on
be
the
380
ballot.
days or something,
Yeah.
potentially.
yes.
Isn't that the final date petitions can be filed and they can't, you have to-
There's, that's what I was
August.
thinking. Independent nominating petitions would be the last typical petition to be filed, but I think that's even earlier in August.
That's
It is.
all.
So I wonder if there's a end-all, be-all date.
I'm positive there is.
Yeah.
I just don't know the date. I wanted to say it was in September, but
No.
Well, you know, I think this is, yeah, we could definitely define that it would go up
But
at
even
the
in that,
next
even in that
general.
case, even at that case, the next valid general election that it could according to election law is how you could maybe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's that, we could go one way or another, you know, put this in here as a possible wording to prevent, you know, a vacancy from extending for a long period in case there was a case where the legislature sat and decided not to appoint.
Did you say 30 days might not be enough, or was that
Yeah.
more? I don't necessarily disagree with that, so if somebody, I wouldn't be opposed to saying 60 days or 90 days, whatever.
60 days or till the next election.
Yeah,
Next election.
yeah. Well, and that's what's nice about this language that I found is, you know, it's 60 let's say 60 days after the vacancy occurred, and then a special election 90 days after that. But if a general election falls 120 days after the vacancy occurred, it will go on that, and you wouldn't have to have a special election. So with those time limits, there's going to be a smaller window than 12 months that a special election could actually take place. So the vacancy would have to occur between 119 days before a general election to 120 days before a general election.
I guess what I'm thinking is, my own opinion is to spend the money on that election for that small window, I could live with it being less than a year.
Yeah.
That's-
Well, and that individual at a special election, if when elected, would serve the remainder of the unexpired term. So it could potentially, if we were sworn in January 1st and a legislator resigned January 2nd, that special election that would take place sometime in early spring of that year that legislator would serve for 2.5 years.
Which
So,
could
you know,
wait
it's,
until November and not cost
yeah.
for the special.
On the flip side of the coin, the sitting legislature should appoint. So it's, it's one way or another. I don't think it's, this isn't something that really is. There's pros and cons to both sides, but I'd look for, the general feelings of how we would like to proceed. So we've got a 60-day, a wait till the general election, got 1 and 1.
I like the 60-day.
Is anybody vehemently opposed to the 60 days?
So you can put the person in quicker, can't you?
Oh,
Sure.
absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely. This is only if the legislature fails to fill a vacancy.
Exactly.
So unless there's any other thoughts on the 60 days, I will proceed with that. And all of these changes, as we're discussing them, they'll go into a final draft, which will be presented when we have gone through and we're all comfortable with this draft and the changes we're making as we go along. And then that will be out there. Those will be highlighted, so you'll see exactly what was changed from this draft. And then we'll move forward, hopefully with adopting that. All right, sections 205 through 208 receive no significant changes to content. Are there any comments on these sections? Yes, Legislator Wheeler.
Thank you. Section 205, I just, my question is, there seems to be some confusion for me.
Okay.
A specifically says that the commission shall consist of 9 members. And then and it also is specific that it shall have no more than 3 members of the commission may be registered voters of any one party. Interesting. And then if you go to B, and I realize you didn't do this. This was just a carryover.
Let me just point out, it's good for third-party candidates.
I hear you, honey.
At least there's got to be three third-party candidates on there.
Now, but if you continue down to B,
Yes.
the members of the commission shall be chosen in the following order. 2 shall be appointed by the minor party or parties represented in the legislature. If we look at that just as this legislator, for example, there would be 2 minor parties. So each party would be able to
I'd
pick
have to come
one.
to agreement with the minor party.
Right?
Yeah.
And 2 shall be appointed by the chair of the county legislature. So 1 person alone gets to pick it. So even if, per se, I was the chairman of the board, I would so vehemently oppose this because I don't think any one person should have that. Just a 9-person body is what I'm saying. But then, and 2 shall be appointed by the county executive. So take what I just said, I absolutely support that 1 person because that 1 person represents that whole side of government. So you then have, so that's 6. The following appointments of these 6 selections, each appointing authority shall appoint 1 additional member in the same order. So to my calculation, that's 12.
See, you know what? I had to read through it a couple times too.
Okay.
And I wondered if you were. So I had to read through it a couple times because it's worded very interestingly. So you have 2 by the minor parties, party or parties, 2 by the chair, 2 by the county executive, and then 1 by the minor party, 1 by the chair, and 1 by the county executive. So it does add up to 9.
Not by following the appointments of these 6 selections,
Yeah.
each appointing authority.
There's only 3 appointing authorities.
But if we go back to the minor party or parties, Because you
One
put,
appointing authority, I would argue.
well, you delegated that it's party or parties. Now, if we go to the point where we can have the Republican can be a minority, the Libertarian can be a minority, the
Maybe
Conservative.
the Libertarian will be the majority, you don't know.
Maybe they could be the majority, but then we would have the Democrat, the Republican, the Conservative, and the Independents, which can all be the minority party because there's.
That are treated as one group.
Thank you. So-
I agree with you as far as that's concerned. I don't think that may be something that we want to look at changing.
I think at the minimum, reword it so
Yeah.
that it's clearer.
Just
Right.
throw in a hypothetical.
Oh boy.
I have a different.
Your chair is speaking.
I'm a Republican.
Okay.
Can you verify that?
So if this were happening now, I would appoint two, then the minority party.
Uh-huh. I think, this, as Barb pointed out,
Minority
I
party
didn't-
is a libertarian party.
yeah,
And the.
and the Republican Party. But this was definitely drafted for, we definitely have not fallen into a group of a body that divides on the letter next to our name. And we divide over other things, but,
Exactly.
but not ever the letter. So, yes, Tom.
Here's what's confused me. The members of the commission shall be chosen in the following order. Two shall be appointed by the minority party or parties represented on the legislature. Who's making that appointment? The chair of those parties?
Those,
Or
well, that
the
would be up
people-
for debate.
I-
I mean, it
Well,
wouldn't
I
be
don't
the
think-
chair.
If we're both Republicans
minority.
and we're the minority party, who's gonna win, Martin or
Is it the
myself?
legislators or is it the chair of the party of the county? Is what I'm
Because
saying.
the
that's a good
minority
point.
party or parties represented on the legislature.
It doesn't say that it's not the chair of the county party. So for instance, let's use the hypothetical of right now. Right now, Rosemary is the chairman of the Republican Party.
Does she get to pick?
Who's the chair of the Libertarian Party at the county?
There is none, right? There's no
No.
party. There's no formed party.
No.
Where's the
So then
majority
you wouldn't
party?
get a vote then.
Yeah, I guess not. What's that?
In
Where's the
perfect
majority
world,
party?
The majority party.
The
would
chair
have
is
the
assumed to be of the majority party, and I think that's a major assumption that this provision's taking.
Now, what you could do, which we failed to do, that we had on our previous board, was we had a minority chair and a majority chair.
Right.
You could say the majority chair or the minority chair.
We did have those positions for about
5
9
months.
months, but then we got rid of them again and never.
Whatever,
filled them.
I forget, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying, if you went back to that, that would be a little
Yeah.
easier way to clarify it here.
Well, I guess it would be a question of this legislature, do we want to define this based upon party affiliation? I do think it is appropriate to have in that first section that no member or no more than 3 members of the commission may be registered voters of any one party, because it's reapportionment. This is something that really deals in this state, unless we go to nonpartisan elections, the districts deal with parties. But provision B on who's actually appointed to that, we've already got a provision that says only that no more than 3 members can be of any one party. So does it really matter what party the appointing authority is? Because let's say the Republican, the legislature is controlled by the Libertarians, they can only appoint 3 Libertarians.
Right.
So,
And of their other choices, even if they're friends with somebody, can only appoint 3 Democrats,
Yeah.
3 of anything.
so, I guess the question would be, and I haven't thought about this much of whether this would be construed to alter a power or duty, unless we altered the provision dealing with the county executive. The county executive under this currently gets 3 appointments, where the legislature gets 6, which kind of makes sense because it's dealing with legislative districts only. It doesn't deal with the executive in any true sense. So unless we change that at all, I would say that this does not change a power or duty because it's currently delegated to the legislature.
Right.
As there's 6 positions delegated to the legislature.
Right.
I have feelings too, you know. But I think it, you know, what would the legislature's thoughts be on just saying we could decide on the numbers and the order in which those numbers are picked, but if it was to be done by a majority vote of the legislature? Because you have that safeguard in there that only no more than 3 members can be of any one party. So if any one party, whatever party controls the legislature at the time, they can only appoint 3 people of that party.
Makes sense.
Right, but why don't we just add the stipulation that all parties must be represented that's on the board, you know, with at least 1 person, so no one's left out for a
No
party.
more, so if it says no more than 3, you could potentially have a registered party, because we never know how many registered parties there actually are.
Right.
So many.
It just, yeah, rent is too damn high party, we'd have to
Yeah.
have somebody from that party on there. You know, if we said, if you get into a party requirement and saying somebody can't be left out, then we would have to have an inclusive list of parties. So I don't know that that would be, because that could, maybe in 20 years, we won't have any Democrats
What
anymore.
if you had the
No.
What if you had the sitting
That's fiction.
legislature? What if you had the sitting legislature in a year or 2 prior to, a year prior, or whatever the time is?
Mhm.
If you had the sitting legislature, just like we did with this planning board,
Yep.
if you had the sitting legislature each pick a representative from their district, the sitting legislature picks a representative from their
Well,
district.
and I would point out that the requirements for the 9 members is that no more than 1 member be a resident of any then existing district. So right now, if we were to appoint a commission on reapportionment, there would have to be 1 member from districts 1 through 9, and out of those 9, no more than 3 can be of the same party. So those requirements are there. I think the question is on the appointment authority. Who is the appointing authority?
That's what I'm saying, let the sitting legislator of that district.
Chair Kelly.
We're not changing anything from what's already in the charter in section B.
Yes.
We are.
We're
No,
cleaning it
this
up.
is
Well, we
this is
could.
what's existing. This is what's existing.
So
There, we could do it if you want to, right?
on this,
We
What
could,
about all the blanks picked?
as long as the executive still has 3 appointments and the legislature still has 6, we could change it by local law. If it were to change the appointment authority by branch, it would have to be subject to permissive referendum. But other than that, you know, is this something that we want to think about since this was just brought up?
I think, for me, if we have 6 appointments, if we're kind of forced to work together, I do agree that the county executive picks that 3. If we have to pick our 6 and we have to work together, then we will. And we already have conditions that we have to meet. And we have to do it as a whole.
Kinda.
This assumes also that we have parties. I mean, we could go to nonpartisan elections at the county.
this assumes we're all here.
Well, let's just move on, maybe.
Well, you want to move on and
Yeah,
let's
think about
highlight
it.
205B.
We'll think about it.
Thank you.
If you have a boilerplate from anywhere else,
What's that?
what is it? What are
Oh,
they-
there's plenty. I mean, Ulster County's Commission on Reapportionment article, I think, is probably 20 pages long by itself. So, you know, there's plenty of it. There's other examples out there, Miss Mannion and I were speaking about this earlier, that charter law is not something that you can just go online and Google what other, because it's unique. Every single charter is unique within the powers granted to us by municipal home rule law at the state.
Well,
So there's 20 some odd unique county charters out there, and as long as they do not supersede and affect certain sections of state law, we can do what we choose within reason and without superseding those laws.
the reason I believe it, if I could,
Yes.
thank you. The reason I really think it needs some definition is, and it's a perfect example. When the Charter Commission was formed and this whole thing started, it said that the Board of Supervisors would draw the lines. That didn't happen.
There's a reason.
But that didn't happen. What happened was the Charter Commission drew the lines, then they put it out there in the public on a map. Then they put it out there on a map, and everybody thought that that's what they were voting on when they went to the voting booth. And really, it hadn't even been done yet. Because the Board of Supervisors was supposed to do it. Well, once the Board of Supervisors got it, and the election was over, all we heard was, well, this is what the people voted on, because that's what they saw in the election. It was a nightmare. It really was. So I think it is our job to make sure we can find this somehow. Make sure that we have something, even if I don't agree with it, at least have something that's,
Fair.
somehow.
Yeah, and you know what we've seen, I mean, when was the last time political parties in Montgomery County actually stayed on their own sides in this room? Rarely.
The legislature, right?
Or the Board of Supervisors for that matter.
Personalities.
Yeah, it's personalities, it's issues, it's not party affiliation, rarely.
Yeah.
So I completely agree, it's something we should revisit, so I'm gonna throw that on next week.
You're before though.
Yeah,
Okay,
But
because
we'll-
there will be a time.
there will be a time limit next week, not tonight.
Yes, we have to get home to watch The Voice.
That's
Uh,
right.
Support
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, who's got
Yeah.
to win?
So the next,
Let's let him pick the districts. He's done a good job.
yeah, exactly.
There'll be a legal voting.
We're gonna, next,
Whatever your seat.
next would be section 209, dealing with the organizational meeting. This whole section was largely restructured. Right now, our charter designates two different timelines for our organizational meeting. This cleans that up until, and says that basically the county legislature shall convene within the first week of January to hold an organizational meeting at a time and place designated in a written notice to be given to each legislator by the clerk of the legislature. That's a new provision. Right now, there is no provision for written notice of the organizational meeting. So something that's probably good to have in there. And then if the clerk shall fail to act or be unable to act, the county clerk shall give notice. The clerk of the legislature or the county clerk in their absence shall call the organizational meeting to order. So this goes back to how it used to be. Our charter right now requires that the county clerk call the meeting to order until a chair is elected. This would allow the clerk of the legislature, or if for some reason that office was vacant, the county clerk would step in and call it to order. Something that we've discussed a bit. Also a provision just in here that the failure to elect a chair by the legislature shall not prevent the legislature from conducting other business.
Can we break it down a little bit here? Let's make believe we're having this organizational meeting now.
Mhm.
So hypothetically, Cheryl is going to call the meeting to order.
Well, first she's going to give written notice to
Right.
each legislator no later than 5 days prior to
I'm
the
talking
meeting.
about meeting day.
Okay.
That's what
Cheryl calls it to order.
Cheryl calls it to order. She's up there. We call it to order. Is there a selection of a temporary chair first? No.
No.
So is Cheryl the one, the clerk, the one who's going to say, "I'll look for a
Yes.
motion for a chair and a second for a chair"?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
And the clerk shall serve as acting chair until the legislature.
That says that?
Yes. The chair, or no, it does. So, it's in there.
Yeah.
You see it? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Next we're at the end of 16, start of 17. It's the reappointment for, you know, our.
So that will come in section 210 when we decide what to do with appointing authority for the clerk of the legislature.